What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Joseph, and welcome to Fiction Ink Flow. This is week 2 of Black History Month, and in the words of James Brown, put your pants up. Down, down, Babylon, black people are the problem. Black people, are the problem. Black people, Alright, enough of that. All this month, I'll be bringing you comics, Funko Pops, art, or creator-owned series by African Americans or featuring African American characters. So last week, I bought you all an indie book that was created by African American called Keisha Demon Eater. Definitely need to go check that out. Today, I want to talk about the two big comic companies, Marvel and DC. For the past several years, they've been putting out these books representing African Americans during Black History Month. So Marvel's book is called Marvel Voices Legends. So obviously, this book has several different short stories about African American characters within the Marvel Universe. It's really good, so you're going to check this out. I'm going to go through these first. And then DC calls their book DC Power. So I want to go through that, and this one's pretty thick. The DC Power book is usually at a higher cost point. So the Marvel book is like $4, the DC book is $10, because the DC usually has way more stories in it. So you get a good deal regardless of what, especially if you are not familiar with some African American characters in the Marvel and DC universe. All right, so now that I've given you that introduction, let's go ahead and kick it off with Marvel first. And we're gonna talk about some of my favorite short stories in this series. Let's start with this beautiful cover that features Captain America, Falcon, Ghostlight, Monica Rambeau, Photon, Misty Knight, Blue Marvel, and Patriot. Marvel brings 4 new stories: Power to the People featuring Patriot, The World Is Not Ready featuring Colleen Woo and Misty Knight, Deathlock the Demolish, and finally Do You Remember featuring Storm and T'Challa. The first story kicks off with Elijah Bradley, aka Patriot of the Young Avengers, facing off against Crossbones, a well-known Captain America enemy, who's telling him he's a disappointment. Crossbones is just wrecking Patriot and kind of teasing him at the same time, saying, "Aren't you a descendant of the original Captain America, Isaiah Bradley, aka The Truth, and that you should have just stayed retired?" We then pick up with Black Panther talking to Isaiah about putting on the costume and getting back into it. And Isaiah like, "I don't even want to put on the costume anymore. I'm not going to fight for a country that doesn't respect me." And Black Panther's like, "Look, don't fight for the country, fight for humanity." Wise words to live by. So Crossbones further teases Patriot by saying, "You came to rescue these kids and they're going to have to watch you die. That's going to scar them for life. Luckily, they'll be dead anyway in a little while." That turns the tides. Patriot musters up and says, "If anyone's going to not make it out, it's going to be you." We next turn to Captain America, aka Sam Wilson, trying to give Patriot some advice, and he uses a Spider-Man line but messes it up, saying power is a responsibility. And no, he finally gets it right, like with great power must also come great responsibility, and you have a responsibility to the legacy. Crossbones continue to pummel Patriot, and he says, "I'm not going to let you murder these kids." And Crossbones like, "I'm not murdering them, I'm just going to send them to an untimely death." Patriot snaps and literally snaps his ankle, and that's where we leave this story off for now. The next story stars the Daughters of the Dragon, Colleen Woo, and Misty Knight. They're on a stakeout, and it's a nice little story about them calling times when they've almost messed up the missions for each other. And it's some really good, funny banter back and forth, and you really get to see why they are forced to be reckoned with. And I'll let you explore more of that in the book later. The third story stars Deathlock, the undead cyborg who's battling one of his enemies, Maximum Force, in this very populated city block. What's interesting about Deathlock is that he has a relationship with his cybernetic computer, and they don't always agree. In order to take down Maximum Force, Puter ruptures a gas main in the building and kind of blows it up. And first Deathlock is like, "Is sure there was nobody in there?" And he's like, "Well, yes, there wasn't." But then he says, "Oh, actually there was some people. But I'm sorry to say I had to do it anyway to save your life because you have some vital injuries going on." Puter basically tells Deathlock that his heart and left lung are severely damaged. But however, the good news is that there are 2 bodies that are suitable candidates, and Deathlock is freaking out about this. Next, we see these strange creatures coming in the window. We have no idea what it is, but Computer has already figured out a way to save Deathlock. I'm going to leave it there. You got to read to know what happens next. The final story kicks off with 2 children fighting in a room in Wakanda. You can see the powers they are using. You already know what this is. These are the two grandchildren of Storm and T'Challa Black Panther. I'm glad that they are back together. As the Dora Milaje are trying to help raise them and watch over them, and the children blame each other, T'Challa says, let me tell you a story about how me and my sibling used to fight, and that's just not the way. T'Challa's story ends with how he met Storm, them falling in love, getting married, how they fought with the X-Men versus the Avengers, and finally reconnecting and rekindling their relationship, which they were always meant to be. I love how this ends. It is a great read. Next, let's get into DC Power. Check out the cover for DC Power, which features some stories from Nubia, Wonder Woman's sister, Green Lantern, Black Lightning's children, Lightning and Thunder, and a whole lot more. But look for the extra special cover with everyone holding up the fist. Some of the stories include Enduring Farewells, The Spice of Life, Pit Stop, Pure Blackness, Lost at Sea, The Session, The Natural Order, Jump Shots and Loose Squats, Fair Play, and The Light That Shines, just to name a few. The first story stars Green Lantern Sojourner Jo Mullein at the end of her 12-month tour of duty protecting the city of During with a little moving assistance from John Stewart Green Lantern. John is kind of trying to help Jo kind of come to terms with what's next. This was her first assignment, and she's actually never been to Oa to meet the Guardians, so like what to expect, what to see, and just kind of get her ready, especially since she has to move. As they are packing up, John sees a plushie of himself, and Jo's trying to cover up like, I didn't get this, but then she's like, I totally got it from Comic-Con. He's like, yeah, I got one myself, and he was like, you know they're gonna make a bobblehead of you one day, right? So I love the banter. The story ends with Jo fully suited up in her Green Lantern costume, and her and John take off to head to Oa, and she says, maybe I'll see you one day again, talking to the city enduring. This next story features someone that's new to me called Bloodwind, who came out in the 90s, and he's considered the Superman of Hell, and he has to traverse the 9 circles of hell in order to seek out the devil himself to put a stop to him and his nefarious ways. This story kicks off with Bloodwind's ancestors who tried to escape slavery and took out their slave master and created a weapon made out of their rage and sorrow, and that this weapon has been passed down from generation to generation and gives people increasingly strong powers to battle all evil. Upon battling a major villain, the Bloodwind Stone was bonded to Martian Manhunter and trapped Bloodwind inside. Eventually his allies freed him and he was let out, but he was imprisoned again in one of the 9 realms of hell. This story is pretty deep, and I'm only going to give you a little taste, but it's all about redemption and about what's right and what's wrong. This next story tells the tale of the Black Superman, Calvin Ellis, also known as President Superman from his universe. And he talks about where he goes to when he finds his inspiration from. And it's not from the people, he actually goes out into the sun, out past the edges of the universe to be alone. He recants how his story is very similar to the original Superman, how he was orphaned, his parents were killed, but that he chose something different. He chose knowledge, he chose to learn, and became a different type of Superman, and he relied heavily on his friends, his own version of the Justice League from his Crisis universe. The final story starring Black Manta is one for the ages. It tells the tale of a guy named Dredd who's hired Black Manta just to help with this mission. However, the big twist comes where the father has sent one member of his crew who is actually in love with his son on a mission to die. The tale then becomes a revenge story as Black Manta goes back to hunt down and kill Dredd for what he's done. And it gives Black Manta some pause because, spoiler alert, his son Aqualad is also gay. And he's like, well, I have reacted the same way when I first found out. So before he actually kills him, the son stops him and says, please don't do this. And he considers his offer, and I'll leave it at that. Those were super dope. So I talked about some of my favorite ones. I'm not giving you everything, but you definitely need to pick this up if you are interested in some really good stories in this particular Marvel Voices Legends book. All right, what did you think? Did Marvel and DC both hit the mark? Did they give you what you wanted? Give you some insight on some of their African-American characters? Possibly introduce you to some new ones you may not be familiar with. But that's been my recommendation of Marvel Voices Legends for 2024, as well as DC Power for 2024. Once again, I really love the representation that both the major comic companies are bringing. Plus, there can always be more. There's always room for new characters, but some of these stories also can lead to possible future stories coming up, which is what I like. They kind of left some of them in an ambiguous place, so like maybe these stories will pick up if there's enough support for them based off the sales of these books. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like as it really helps out the channel. Also, if you really want to say something, you really want to hit that mark, drop a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to know when new content drops just like this. Alright, until next time, peace. If you don't have it, you are truly missing. What's up?